Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and you all know how much I love cheap stuff that's functional. And last month we looked at the Wyze Cam. This was a $20 security camera that I felt was pretty decent for the price, and they have just come up with a new one that costs $10 more but adds pan and tilt capabilities along with some digital zooming as well, so you can get a little more functionality out of your security system, but only spend $30 on the camera itself. It has a lot of the features that we saw on the original, so we're not going to repeat a lot here. We're going to look at what's new, and we'll refer you back to that original video if you want to see more about how some of the specific software features operate. Now, before we get into this, I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that this came in free of charge from Wyze. However, I did buy the original camera and liked it quite a bit. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one has reviewed what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. Pretty nice little device here. It feels about the same as the other one. It doesn't feel like it's a very expensive product, but of course it is only $30. It swivels here, as you saw, on this little base here, and seems to be doing a good job of that. The tilting is done inside of the little camera receptacle here, so you can get 93 degrees up and down, and then 360 degrees here on the swivel. It will stop here, and then you have to go back the other direction. It doesn't go all the way around, but the camera has a 120-degree field of view on it, so it is able to pick up the full 360 degrees. I'll show you some of the motion detection capabilities that it has in a few minutes here. Now on the bottom you have an SD card slot like the original camera, because what this can be set up to do is continuously record onto the SD card. It shoots at 1080p at 15 frames per second, just like the other camera did. And then when it gets to the end of that card, it starts deleting the older footage. I think it stores files about a minute at a time. That's what we saw on the original one there. So the card will continually manage itself. You can pop the card out and look at it in a computer, or view the footage through their app if you wish. It's the same app that works with the other cameras in their line as well. I was also happy to see here it's got a tripod mount, so if you did want to mount it somewhere, you can just get a tripod compatible screw to put in there, and you can get it put up anywhere you want. Over here is a reset button just for getting it programmed initially onto your Wi-Fi network. Like the other camera, it does not work on 5 gigahertz networks, only 2.4 gigahertz networks. Most routers by default will pick the right frequency for what you want. However, in my house, I've segmented them by frequency, so I had to do a little bit extra typing when I set up the app, but it wasn't too hard to get it up and running. On the back here, you've got some speakers because you do have two-way voice communication that we'll look at in a few minutes here. There's a USB port that is not used at the moment, but that might be something they end up using later. And then you do have to keep it plugged in at all times, and the micro USB cable plugs in right there. It uses a little bit more power than the prior edition camera, so it needs a 5-volt 2-amp charger that's very similar to what you might use with a tablet PC. So if you were using different types of USB chargers to power your cameras, you'll need to make sure you've got one that can supply at least 2 amps for this camera, because it does require a little bit more power. Now, one of the cool things about the Wyze cameras beyond the low price is that there's no subscription fee, so no ongoing cost of ownership. So as long as the company stays in business, you'll be able to continue using your camera in perpetuity, presumably. And they also offer you some cloud storage as part of the purchase price. So when you have the motion event set to on, when it detects something, it will send up a 12-second clip to the cloud, and it will store it there for 2 weeks. You'll have to download it before it goes away. Likewise, you could also be storing those clips on the SD card, but should something happen to your home or the camera gets stolen, those clips will be up there on the cloud waiting for you, which is a nice thing to see there, so that's not such a bad deal at all. Now again, we covered the software in depth in the last video, but we're going to look at some of the new features that this pan, tilt, and zoom camera brings. So let's pop open the app and see what you can do. So here is the home page of the Wyze app. As I mentioned in the last review, this is a requirement. You can't just hook it up to your security system or your existing NAS box or something. It has to be operated through their app. And you can see here we've got 2 cameras on the screen, because the other one is the camera we reviewed a few weeks ago, but we're going to pop into the pan cam. By the way, you can share the camera with other Wyze app users too, so you can have friends and family pop in and check out your cameras when you want them to. Just know they pick up video and audio, so you just want to keep that in mind before you share your camera with the world. And now that we're in the camera here, you can see that we have a little control pad at the bottom. And when I move the camera here to the left, you can see it starts tilting there, which is kind of fun, right? And then we can go back here and go in the other direction. Again, it won't turn all the way around. It stops here, and you'll get a little notice here saying that you reached the end. So to get to the other side here, we have to go all the way back around. So it's not a true 360 in the sense that it can pivot in 360 degrees there, but the lens will pick up everything. Likewise, what you'll see here with the tilt function is that it will tilt inside that little vestibule there that it sits in, which is nice, and you get a pretty good view of everything here. You can also do a pinch to zoom if you want to do a digital zoom on something. There's no optical zoom here on the camera. Now they have some pretty cool automated features surrounding this pan and tilt feature that they kind of bury in the interface, oddly enough. So we do have controls for turning on or off the sound. We can record directly to the phone and speak back to the camera like we could do on the other device in addition to taking still photos. But on this camera, if you go over to more, what you'll see here are some things that you might want to play with, including one here called Pan Scan. And what this will do is kind of put the camera into a patrol mode. And what it will start doing here is basically looking at a spot for about 10 seconds or so, and then it will move again, monitor for another 10 seconds, look for some motion, and then move to another position, just kind of rinse and repeat throughout the course of the day. And this is something that you've probably seen on expensive security systems where the camera automatically rotates looking for trouble. This will do that for you. And if you click on the little gear icon in the upper right-hand corner and go over to Advanced Settings and Motor Controls, again, they're burying a lot of these cool features in here, unfortunately. If you go over to Pan Scan Settings, you can actually set up custom waypoints for the camera to take when it is working in that patrol mode. So I'm just going to wait for it to load up here. Something's going on with the app, and I'll show you how to set up some custom waypoints for this function. All right, so we got the app to cooperate once again, and right now it's on its default patrol method, which is to start at waypoint 1 and make its way over to waypoint 4. It waits 10 seconds at each waypoint to see if it sees anything, and then it moves on. And then when it gets to 4, it moves in the opposite direction, so it will stop at 4 and then go back to 3, 2, and then 1 again because it can't go all the way around in a circle on its pedestal. And what I want to do is something a little less than the default, a little more narrow of a patrol range here. So I'm just going to whip the camera back around here and start from this spot right here. So I'll get it on that door, and then I'll tap on set. And then I'm going to hit the plus button there just next to that thumbnail that it's creating. And we're going to move it a little bit, maybe set it right over here and tilt the camera up slightly and click set again. And then I'll hit the plus thing once more and have it maybe end up right over here on the last screen there and hit set again. And now I'm going to click on save. And what this will do now is have the camera do now the more narrow patrol range that I just set. So here it is on waypoint 1. It is going to sit there and wait for a second or 10 seconds and then move on to waypoint 2. You can see it move the camera up there for me as well. And now we're going to have it go back over to waypoint number 3. And you saw it move the camera back down again as well. So it's kind of moving on a pre-programmed path. But now what it will do is go back to 2 and then 1 again. So you can set up your own custom patrol here as this is going. Now another thing it can do while it's patrolling is track motion when it detects it. And I'm going to talk about the notifications and how that works in a second. This is separate from that. And what you can do here is go in once again into that more section, and you'll see there's an option for motion tracking. And this may not work too well under my studio lights with all this crazy motion going on here, but when this feature is enabled and the camera detects motion during the course of its patrolling, what it will do is kind of stop its patrol and start following around the motion that it's picking up. So if I have my hand waving around here, you can see now it's trying to follow that movement around. It doesn't do such a great job all the time. This is not an ideal example of how this should work given all the crazy lights that I have going on in here, but you can see how it's stopping its patrol and now trying to figure out what's going on and trying to follow the motion here as it's happening. Now, I did take some footage earlier of me just walking around the studio here with this feature enabled. It did an okay job. It's not perfect. It's not always going to find motion, especially when it's kind of a darker area and you've got people walking behind objects and that sort of thing. But generally, it's been okay, and it's not something that I would normally expect a $30 product to do all that well, yet it is passable. Now, I do think this will work a little bit better if you have a lot of contrast between the object in motion and the rest of the background. But it is working somewhat here, and I think it's something that they can improve upon. But it was not working as well as the demonstration on their website was working, at least in my experience, with a real-world scenario with objects that are going to get in the way and kind of throw it off. I did find it was also very aggressive when it did find some motion. It very quickly moved the camera, and sometimes it would lose sight of what it was trying to track in the first place. Now, in this last example, the camera was detecting and tracking motion, but it was not notifying us of that. So in order to get notified and have those videos pushed to the cloud, you have to enable the motion event function. And you do that by clicking on the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner. And that will take you over to the camera settings. And there is an option here for alert settings. What we can do is enable motion detection, and that will get that feature working. Now, one thing that they've added to the camera system, and this includes the old camera as well, is they have a detection zone now. So if you turn off full screen, you will then have the options to set the detection zone here. And what it's doing right now is giving me a box that it will look in for a motion detection alert to be sent out. So if I'm moving my hand over here, that's outside of where the camera is looking. But if I happen to have something take place in this box, it will then push an alert. Now, the issue here, though, with the PTZ camera is that it can always be moving around. This motion window will only apply to when the camera is in this position. You can't set different motion detection zones based on the waypoints, unfortunately. So this might be a feature better suited for the other camera that doesn't move. But what will happen here is that this will become the default setting for the camera. So if it does move for its motion tracking event, it will ignore this motion detection zone. And then after 15 seconds of inactivity, it will move back here and then start looking in that box once again. So this might be a little confusing on the pan cam here, but probably makes more sense for zone-based detection on the non-movable Wyze Cam that we looked at about a month ago. Now, they did improve how the two-way communication works on this new camera. So when you click on the speak icon here, it establishes a two-way conversation, as you can hear, between you and whoever is standing next to the camera. So I want you to hear first what it sounds like coming out of the camera.
Get out of my bathroom. No, I mean it, really. Get out of my bathroom.
And now you can hear what it sounds like when you're on the app listening to the camera.
This is a test of the audio and the night vision at the same time.
So the audio isn't great, but it's good enough, I think, to give an intruder a little bit of a scare when they're rummaging around your house, and you can certainly understand what the other person is saying. It's just not going to be the best audio quality you'll hear. But the cool thing is all of this stuff works over the internet, so when you're not home, you can get all the PTZ functions and have that two-way communication going on it. And the video quality on the camera is adequate. It's not spectacular, but I'm not expecting much out of this price point, and I was pleased with it overall. It's very similar to what the other camera was able to do. Night vision works just fine. You can decide whether to leave that on, off, or on auto, depending on your particular situation. And by and large, I think if you have things you want to keep an eye on and monitor in your home, this is a pretty economical way to do that. Now, one of my complaints in the prior video has been addressed by the Wyze Cam folks, and that is adding IFTTT support for arming and disarming the camera. And what IFTTT is kind of a connective tissue between your Internet of Things devices, and it offers a lot of cool options that you can add to the mix here. So I'm going to go in and create a little applet here that will arm the camera system when I leave the house. In other words, turn on the motion detection when I drive out of a certain area. So I'm going to have the this in the if this then that equation here look at my location, but I could even do things like date and time or set a button push or something like that. But I think for this example, the location-based trigger is probably the best one to use. And I'm going to set this to when I exit an area, and I'm going to pretend that I live in New York City, and anytime I leave the city, have the camera here arm itself so that it's looking for motion events to send up to the cloud and notify me about. So you can see here it gives me a pretty big area, but I could zoom in. Maybe I live in Central Park here, and when I leave this area of the park, it will arm the camera. So I'll hit save there, and I'll create the trigger. And then that is going to be our Wyze camera here. So if I go in and look for WYZ, you can see we've got Wyze in here. I've already connected it to my Wyze account, and they've got a few things that can happen when I leave that area. So I can enable motion detection here, which is what I want to do, but I could even have it do things like record a short video clip when I leave the area if I wanted to. I could turn on or off notifications, but right now I just want to do the enable motion detection, and then I can choose which device that I am going to have get armed. So for example, I could have it only do one camera, or I can have it do all the cameras, which I'll do here. But you can see you can set up a bunch of these different applets for different locations if you're managing cameras at multiple locations, and get some really cool stuff set up through this IFTTT applet. And you can even have it do things in the opposite direction, where if motion is detected, perhaps you can have it turn on your Philips lights or something if you want. So I can do something here that if it detects motion or even sound, let's say if sound is detected on the pan cam, I can create this trigger here, and then that could be my hue lights here. Let's pull up those real quick. I could have it then just decide to turn on all the lights in the house every time it detects sound or something like that. So there's a lot of things that you can do with IFTTT to connect up your other devices that are supported by that platform. And it's really great to see it finally implemented here, because it wasn't implemented there a month ago, but it looks like they're definitely listening to customers and giving them some ways to better utilize their stuff. You could spend days in this app trying to find different ways to connect things up. You could even keep a log of every time motion is detected in a Google spreadsheet if you want. So you could really geek out on this quite a bit. So overall, I am pleased with this, as I was the first one. If you set your expectations at what a $30 device will bring you, I think you'll be pleased, and maybe it might exceed those expectations. I remain concerned that this company needs to keep itself afloat financially to keep delivering this to us. In fact, if the company is out of business, the product won't work. There is a cloud component to this app so that it actually communicates with the camera, and if they go out of business, that will pretty much be the end of the product's functionality. So I'm hoping they have a good financial plan in place here, because to some degree this feels a little too good to be true, that you've got a very functional camera at a very low price, yet they deliver all of these great features to you without any monthly fee. And perhaps again, it's just the ongoing volume of camera sales that keep this going. So that's my only concern and only caution with this product line. But so far, in my experience, this has been a very good indoor camera series, and one that I am comfortable recommending at the moment. Be sure to check out my original video, because I do dive very deep into how the software functions. A lot of the functionality in that video, almost all of it actually, applies to this product also. So I'll put a link to that down below in the video description so you can check it out. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters of the Black Eyed and Blues Music Hour podcast, Chris Allegretta, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.